Welcome all to a conversation with Abhijit Chanda. This is the first of my new video interview series of my Skeptical Inquirer online column. So, hello, Abhijit.
Hey Rob, thanks for having me on. It's really nice to get you finally be in this.
I want to tell viewers that I first learned of you due to a promo for your Be Rationable show, which was run on the Skeptic Zone. And then I met you at SciCon 2022 in Las Vegas. And I just had to get to know you. We had a long talk there, and I actually got to interview you for a segment on the Skeptic Zone, episode 738, if anyone wants to look that up.
Yeah, yeah.
So Vegas is halfway around the globe from where you live in India. It's about as far as away you can get on the Earth. It must have taken a day or more. Why did you decide to go, and was it worth the trip?
Well, actually, I went to SciCon on in 2018, but and I did it again in 2022 because I was like, if we're back to live conferences, so I have to do this because it is the uh, biggest event of its kind in the world as far as I'm aware of. And it's something that I've been hearing about for many years, and it's something I've always aspired to go to. So, fortunately, very fortunately, I managed to scrounge up the means to go twice. And last time we met and we had a great time. And this time it was so much more comfortable because last time it was like I had no idea. I had never met anyone before. It was a complete stranger to the whole thing. So this time it felt much more comfortable. I was like, oh, hi. And, met Susan again. I met Susan last time as well. It
This is
was,
Gervais.
yeah, so she's so engaging and so chatty and so easy to talk to. So she really kind of got me in the zone and got me chilled out, and I met several people through her. So it's always a fantastic experience,
So,
and it's definitely worth it because not only does it improve my skeptical street cred, but I think the first time I came, it made this strong affirmation that I'm on the right track. I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. I mean, it's not like I never thought I was alone. But before I started making the podcast, I had a website, and I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I don't know if anybody's reading it. I don't know if anybody cares. I'm just a small fry. And then I'm shaking hands with Richard Dawkins and Bill Nye, and Stephen Fry. Yeah, that was in 2018, and this time with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it filled me with this affirmation that I'm on the right track. I'm doing the right thing. These are my people. It might be halfway or literally all the way across the world, but we're all thinking the same things. We're all on the same track. We're all trying to do the same thing and make the world a better place. So that's what got me to start my podcast properly. This and then my YouTube channel. And this time, when I went there and I came back, and I was like, I have to do my YouTube channel like justice now. This is it, again, it gives you this boost of confidence that you need to do this because it's important, because the world is depending on it, and the more voices the merrier. So it's totally worth it, every single penny and moment that I've invested in it.
well, I'm glad it was worth your time for sure. And yeah, you told me the last time we talked about meeting Neil, and that was like a highlight. And you went to the VIP lunch, so you got to spend some extra time with him, right?
Yeah, if I'm going halfway across the world, I got to make this happen. if I Last time I went to the Susan Blackmore lunch, and I for some reason missed the Richard Dawkins one, but this was like a double bonus this time because I was sharing the table with Richard Dawkins, but at the same time there was Neil deGrasse Tyson right there, and it just it totally like blew me away. So hopefully I'll have him on for an interview for my podcast.
Tell me about your journey into skepticism. Like, how long have you been considered yourself a skeptic? How did that happen in your life, or were you always a skeptic?
I have actually spent most of my life being really gullible and open to pretty much any idea. And I'm still, to a great extent, I give every thought, every claim, every idea its due diligence, like not just due diligence, but it's due consideration. Like I never reject anything outright. Everything is valid until I've, kind of investigated it or figured it out a little more, even the most ridiculous claims. But it's so I think the first domino kind of fell when I had this conversation about evolution with a friend of mine. He's a Muslim and he is a creationist, and I had never met a creationist before. So that conversation was extremely jarring. Like, it was the first time that any belief I'd ever had been questioned or outright rejected by someone else. And that kind of got me shaken, and it forced me to reevaluate what I believed and to really look up evolution and, like, is it really real? Am I wrong here? Like, have I just taken it for granted? And then after that, I went to the UK a few years later, and that domino fell, but it didn't drop off any others. But then I had to write a dissertation. I was studying professional writing, and I had to write a section of a novel for my dissertation, and that resulted in me kind of investigating the beliefs I had about ancient technology and ancient aliens. So, because I used to believe that, it's a legitimate possibility, because with my family and, people, and there's all sorts of people who think that, the Indian civilization especially goes way back. And, we used to watch these epics, the Hindu epics, which is the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And during the TV shows, they'd have people, shooting arrows at each other. And as soon as the arrows would meet, they'd explode, and a bunch of sparks and a lot of crazy stuff, and chariots that would fly and all those things. And I was like, maybe they had planes back then. Maybe they had missiles back then. It's a possibility. But then I thought, no, if I want to write a novel about it, and a hard science novel like the likes of Arthur C. Clarke or Isaac Asimov, who are my heroes, don't I had no illusions that I was going to write a book as good as they would. But I said, I want to put in the work and figure out if this stuff is actually true, or has it been debunked ages ago. And when I started looking that up, I found that it was all bunk. And I had to kind of start reevaluating what I believed in that facet. So that kind of brought back the evolution conversation. And I started looking up more about evolution, and then ancient aliens, ancient technology, and started discovering all sorts of new things. And the more I dug into evolution, the more I started encountering religious claims against evolution. So that kind of started having me question. I was never really a theist, but then it kind of got me questioning, like, I have never really thought if there was a God, or that there wasn't a God. I was an atheist.
And was
And
your family Hindu or something else?
my family belongs to a reformist sect of Hinduism called the Brahmo Samaj. At this stage, I was questioning that as well, and I kind of then the dominoes started falling. So then religion went out, and I was like, wait, maybe I'm just an atheist, and I never really believed in the first place. Maybe that's the way it is. And then alternative medicine started dropping one after the other. So homeopathy, Ayurveda, and a whole bunch of stuff. So that you know explosion, you can say, of dominoes.
How old were you?
This was about 12 years ago. I was about 30.
Okay.
So a bit late in life on the whole, but better late than never.
Absolutely.
And that's when I started evaluating everything. Then I started soaking in, podcasts like the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, like Skeptoid. I just started just absorbing all of these ideas and thoughts and ways to evaluate claims. And then finally in 2016, I finally realized that this is what I want to do in life. Like, I want to help people understand skeptical thinking. I found my calling. It was a eureka moment. And so I've slowly been building up from there, and finally managed to get into a position where at least a few hundred people know what I do.
I think it's more than that. So how long have you been doing that? When did you first start any public kind of science communication, podcasting, skeptical talking?
So I first, I think it was in 2016 that I started my blog. So I wrote a few articles on women's rights, on sex education, things like that, which was the first things that were like on the top of my mind. And especially around then, you know, this is no, actually, this was a little earlier than 2016. I think this was around 2012, 2013, something like that, because there had been a
10 years ago.
huge outcry in India against, rape and domestic abuse against women, because there was a really horrible rape case which happened in 2011, which kind of got the entire world talking. And I found that this was one thing that I wanted to put my, get my head around, which was trying to understand why women were being treated so badly in India.
That's
Why
fascinating.
were women being treated so badly across the
So,
world?
so you got pulled into skepticism then, if I'm hearing this right, through social justice topics.
That was it was something that it catalyzed my, the starting of my blog, you can say. It's like, I need to get some word out there. If I have any insight into this, if it's at all legitimate, it should be out there, and hopefully people will find it. So that's when I started my blog, and the blog kind of went on. I wrote a few more articles here and there, and then uh, I think it was in 2018 when I was like, when I came to Psychon, and I was like, I've written a bit of stuff. I should put this up in a podcast. So I started just reading out the stuff that I'd written in a more conversational way, and made it sound like it was a, solo one man podcast, just very similar to what Skeptoid has been doing.
Okay, one
So
topic, short duration, that kind of a thing. Yeah. So,
exactly.
so how's all this gone over with your family and friends?
Well, they are fortunately they're all very supportive. Some of my friends, my wife has also been extremely supportive. She not really doesn't really care about the subject matter as much, but she's always been supportive, great with coming up with ideas and, initiatives that, sometimes, which I honestly can't do. I'm really bad at Instagram, for instance, and she's a big fan of that. TikTok has come and gone in India. It's now illegal. It's banned in India, so I can't do anything on there, but I'm trying to get a little bit more active on Instagram. My family has been extremely supportive. I had some interesting debates with my dad about a few things, which they have been. I mean, they're strong believers in things like homeopathy, especially, and to some extent Ayurveda. So I've managed to, at least to some extent, managed to get them off the idea that homeopathy is at all beneficial. Just go to the doctor and do the regular stuff.
Sorry, since you brought that up, let me ask this now. Yeah, so I want to talk about the general topics that you have in your podcast. You have some that are interviews of people, which are really cool. I love doing that too, which is why you're here. You've had a few on talking about psychics. That's a topic I love. And you have tackled pretty heavily, I see, Ayurveda and other alternative medicine paradigms that are popular. I had never, in fact, heard the word Ayurveda until recently. I looked it up in preparation for talking to you today. It says something like 80% of the population in India report using it. It's like,
Yeah.
so for the Western audience, can you just give a quick synopsis? What is that?
So it is essentially, it's a naturalistic treatment modality, I guess you could say. It's essentially, it's very proto-scientific, herbs and potions and etc., which have been kind of mixed together over many, I mean, since, early Indian civilization. And this has gone through a lot of trying and testing, and there's been one of the Vedas. I mean, it's Ayurveda, which is the Veda is one of the books which details a lot of these potions and preparations and how to prepare them. So it's very similar to, there are other modes as well in India, like Unani, which is mostly followed by the Muslim population, and Siddha, which is very popular in the south to some extent, but in many ways it kind of comes under the umbrella. They're all herbal medicines of one way. I hesitate to call them herbal because they not only contain herbs, but especially in Ayurveda, they have a tendency of containing heavy metals as well as a part of the preparations.
Ugh.
So it's not all fun and games, and there's some
Yeah,
really dangerous stuff in there.
so yeah, I'm looking this up. I actually have a quote here from Wikipedia. Some Ayurvedic preparations have been found to contain lead, mercury, and arsenic. A 2008 study found those three substances in close to 21% of US and Indian manufactured Ayurvedic medicines sold on the internet.
I interviewed a gentleman called Dr. Abby Phillips, who is a biliary specialist, meaning specialist in liver disease. And he has had a lot of patients who have come in with not only acute liver failure, where the liver has just given up, but he has, with chronic disease, with chronic liver disease, which because of extremely large amounts of not only heavy metal poisoning, but a lot of the things like ashwagandha, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, even in the West, giloy, turmeric, a lot of these things, when absorbed by the body, have, the liver has to deal with all of them. And because people tend to consume these in large quantities because there is no official dosage standard, they end up, and they all think it's natural. They just end up, almost killing themselves with extremely large quantities of this stuff. So that was an extremely enlightening conversation. So that is, and it's a serious problem. The reason why I've been focusing on alternative medicine is because it is something that affects people's everyday health and their income. To some extent, Ayurveda and homeopathy in India are relatively inexpensive, and you can even find people who are doing it for free. That's fine, but then you are putting people's lives in danger because of it. And one of India's largest FMCG, which is fast moving consumer goods companies, is an Ayurvedic company started by a yogi called Baba Ramdev. Now, he has a huge following. And now on Instagram, not only is he doing all sorts of contortions, but while he's doing them, he is telling everybody that if you have eyesight problem, then you should do this and you should take this medicine, and he starts listing down all the benefits, and he just carries on and on and on, and it's constant, and people just buy it hook, line, and sinker. And there's really nothing one can do about it except for crib about it on social media like me.
Yeah, well, the more people pushing back like you, the better. So how did the use of these kinds of ineffective modalities, I think, as you put it, affect the course of COVID in India?
Well, that's a bit complicated because COVID wreaked havoc in India just like anywhere else in the world. But there are a lot of people who are saying that not as many people died in India as in other countries. And there must be something to that. Is it because we live in such squalid environments, is it that our immune systems are naturally stronger, or that the Ayurvedic stuff helped, or the homeopathic stuff helped, or whatever it is? But there's a serious problem, and there are reliable sources who are saying this, and I've read it in several places, and it puzzles me, like, why are people not considering that? One, we have a horrible medical infrastructure where we do not know how many people have died of what
That's
in
what I
most
was
parts of
thinking.
the country.
That's what I was thinking. So they're miscounting.
Exactly. First of all, there's there's literally an infrastructure problem where we seriously have absolutely no idea how many people have died in what parts of the country, due to what causes, because they are just not close to any medical facilities in rural India and the deep villages. And plus, we know that there has been a huge fudging of the numbers. People have been dying in huge numbers. There have been photographs and video taken of dead bodies floating down rivers and funeral homes being filled to overflowing with pyres. While there was one report where there were like 80 to 90 pyres burning at one time in one particular funeral home in a city. I think it was Lucknow. And the reported deaths in that city at that time was one that day.
Oh, wow.
That is an extreme case, but this was done across the country. There have been many people, there have been hospitals which have been specifically told not to report a death as COVID if it was due to some other comorbidity. So, with all of this going on, as well as having a ministry that promotes alternative medicine, a proper government ministry called the Ministry of Ayush, which stands for Ayurveda, A, Y for yoga, U for Unani, S for Siddh, H for homeopathy, and a silent N for naturopathy.
Wow.
So with all of that, I'm quite sure we did very badly during COVID.
What was the vaccine availability and uptake?
Fortunately, that has been extremely good. The availability has been, it was kind of scant in the beginning because, of course, we've got a humongous population, and but there has been, fortunately, no large anti-vaccine movement in India. That is one, I guess you could call, blessing.
Yeah, there was silver lining for sure.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked at that because, like, as far as I understand, it's pretty much all over the world.
Yeah, we did have a few anti-vaxxers, but they were very, very few and far between. So fortunately, everybody got their first and second vaccines. I think almost the entire population has had it. I think at least, I mean, definitely over 90%. And boosters have been coming. People have been either taking the boosters or not. Some people have just gotten COVID multiple times already, so they don't feel that they need the boosters, which, you know, it's probably not a good idea. We've been wearing masks like all the time. There are people who are still wearing masks when they don't have to.
Oh, well, so that's a big difference, and that's a big help. Yeah, as you know, we have
Yeah.
like half of our population or more who just like, refuse to do that because of, freedom. Yeah, yeah, that was,
Freedom.
yeah, that was very unfortunate. All right, so you've covered all these topics. You've had people to talk about them on your show, and the other things I've seen listed were diets. Right, you seem to be interested in that. That's just generally Indian mysticism. And critical thinking, I love when you talk about that. That's one of my favorite subjects, right? I've seen you talk about like quality of evidence and anecdotal evidence. One of your more recent ones was about that, right?
Yes, absolutely. That was my latest video, which so I've been actually got a lot of requests of doing all the fallacies and biases that possibly exist to
Wow.
do a video on
Yeah,
each one of them. So that's going to be a big job. But this is based on an article I wrote quite a while back because I wanted to not only understand why anecdotal evidence was considered weak, is considered weak, but I wanted to help people understand why stories are so compelling and why we humans rely more on stories than on evidence. And just to kind of raise that awareness that we are extremely fallible beings. We believe in magic. We see rabbits in clouds. We see we can be fooled at a moment's notice, and we wouldn't even know it until it's too late. We've got scammers all over the place who are taking advantage of exactly those properties, and we have con artists and all sorts of people who are making tons of money of people's gullibility. Right after PsyCon, I went to the FFRF meeting in Austin, Texas.
Freedom from Religion Foundation, for people who don't know.
Exactly. And that was another life affirming moment where I kind of had to, like, I have to talk about religion. I had been keeping clear of it, like, very much like Skeptic's Guide has kind of kept clear of religion for most part. I was like, I have to talk about it, and I can look at society from a critical perspective and say, we've got a few problems here and we need to fix these. And largely it's the atheist community in India, at least all the atheists that I've met, who are extremely troubled by the caste system and the discrimination that it causes. So, just as a little introduction, the caste system is essentially, it is a way of subdividing the community based on their occupation, which sounds fine until you get to the bottom rung of castes, which which is essentially people who are taking care of, sanitation, cleaning homes, cleaning certain hygiene facilities, if you know what I mean, taking care of dead bodies, working with dead animals, like in the leather industry. So all of these professions have been at the absolute bottom rung of the caste system. Everybody above that is fine. They can mix about, they can do anything they want to, but these people at the bottom, they are untouchable, and to a great extent. And that is a very real thing. They literally cannot be touched by anybody outside their castes, and people from upper castes cannot, or do not, refuse to. They refuse to drink water from the same well. They refuse, to some extent, even to eat food if the shadow of one of the lower caste people has fallen on the food. They will no longer eat the food. If your father was a low caste person, then you are considered a low caste person. So it's passed down hereditary, in a hereditary manner. Your profession could be something completely different. You could be working in a multinational company as an executive, but still be discriminated against because you're low caste. People who are of a lower caste will most likely get menial jobs or labor jobs. The likelihood of being given a free lunch at school, of getting certain jobs, of getting a home to rent, it can go as far as that. And of course, who you get married to. So these are all, this now, it's very varied and very mixed up, but those aspects of your life can definitely be determined if you're lower caste, and you will be denied certain jobs. So even if you get the job, you might be harassed by your colleagues who are of higher castes, and they'll either make fun of you or ridicule you or make life uncomfortable for you one way or the other. And if you, by any chance, even in a village, have a tendency to, say, attend an event which you might have been invited to by somebody else, but somebody else in the community says, "Oh, you're a low caste person, you can't be here," you will get thrown out and beaten up and then thrown out, or both. So it's extreme. It's still, and there are a lot of people who just deny that this is happening in the country, whereas it is still so deeply ingrained and so prevalent. People have tried to convert to Islam and Christianity to escape the caste system. There have been people who have tried to escape the country to escape casteism, and they still get discriminated against one way or the other. So it's so deeply ingrained in in society, in Indian society, that it is going to be extremely hard, and it'll probably take several generations, if not a couple of 100 years, to be able to actually get rid of the caste system. But we have to have conversations about it. We have to start talking against it. I can see more and more people on YouTube, on social media, who are fighting bad ideas. Vimoh is one of them, Vimoh. He speaks very well about rationality, reason, and atheism. Science is Dope, which is another YouTube channel by a person called Pranav Radhakrishnan. So I've gotten to know these people. Abby Phillips has formed a skeptical organization with Pranav and several other people in the South. I'm also a part of a skeptics group, so to speak, at this point of time. We're trying to figure out, mission, vision, what are milestones that we need to get in and do some branding, etc. So we're up and coming. You could say that this is all very nascent and at this point of time, and I hopefully this is going to grow rapidly as we move along, because I'm sure is a significant portion, at least on an average, that there must be at least 10% of Indians who probably are atheists and are probably trying to find information on how to be more, better critical thinkers, but they just don't know where to go to. So the more of us there are, and the more languages we speak, the more people we'll reach. So hopefully this is going to escalate thanks to social media and YouTube, and get out there,
Yeah, I
spread
wanted to
across.
ask you about the language issue. So that's most of the population in the United States speaks English. I know India has many languages, Hindi just being one of them, and
Yeah.
not everyone speaks a common language. So this seems to be more of a problem of spreading the word in that country just for that reason alone.
Yeah, exactly. So the about 10% of this country at least understands English to some extent. They might not be extremely articulate or eloquent in English, but they get it. About 2% are people like me who can speak it and speak it well and understand it and communicate effectively in English. Hindi is the second most common language, um, which is, wait a second, languages spoken in India.
Yeah, that was my next question. Did you ever think of doing, just replicating everyone that you have in English and in Hindi?
I will. I do intend to. I need to have people who can do that for me, though, because my Hindi is deplorable.
Uh,
It's never been a language I've been very comfortable with, and it's really like I can speak it, I can get a point across, but it's definitely not eloquent enough to really get any complex ideas out there. Um, but I definitely, at some point of time, I want to have my entire show translated and re-uploaded in maybe several languages, because I think Tamil is another one which is not just spoken in India, but it's also spoken in some version in Sri Lanka and in a couple of Southeast Asian countries. So it's yeah, it's quite a significant portion of people who speak Tamil and Hindi. So those would be the two primary languages to really, get into. And hopefully at some point of time, I will manage to do that. I have the resources to hire a few people to do full translations. That's an aspiration I want to get to. Right now, though, these science communicators who I told you about, like Vimo and Science is Dope, and there are a few others who are, starting to grow. They are definitely getting across to a lot of people. So they're getting a lot of attention. And I think the sky's the limit.
okay, well, I think we can end it there. Thank you so much for coming on and having a conversation.
It was a pleasure, Rob. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.